What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And in today's video, we're going to be having a look at the brand new upcoming Pirate Alliance Kizuna Clash. And remember that this Kizuna Clash is actually going to be working in tandem with the World Cruise Celebration. So the what do you call it, championship or exhibition series of the latest Pirate Rumble season that just passed, that was counted as part 1. Part 2 is the treasure map, which is currently ongoing as of the recording of this video, and part 3 is going to be including the Kizuna Clash, which Kizuna is actually the most important for the World Cruise. It gives you the most points towards it, so just wanted to give you guys that little bit of info that if you want to be ranking high in World Cruise, you actually want to be playing quite a lot of the upcoming Kizuna Clash. So in this video, we're going to be talking about just the 10-star difficulty. We're not going to be having a look at the super boss in this video. I do plan on having a video in regards to the super boss coming up, but this video is just pertaining to the 10-star difficulty. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first one we are going to be having a look at is the versus Dex variation right here. So against the Dex variation, as you can see on screen, Shooter, Driven, and Powerhouse are all going to be receiving cooldowns here. And with this team that you're seeing, ideally as the friend captain, you would use something like Jesus Burgess. I think he's probably the best choice, at least for this particular team. And of course, this is not a team that everyone is going to be able to build, but it's just an idea that I had some characters that just kind of work really well together, that get around all of the gimmicks. So I'll explain this team and how it works. And again, this is just, a breakdown of a random team that I put together, but it gives you a bit of an idea as what you could expect in terms of what are the good characters that help you get around this piece of content. So on Battle 2, you do see that there is some slot change. So your right side get block slots, your left side get unfavorable slots, as well as there being resilience and defense. Now with this team, what we'd be doing is we'd be using, as I said, Burgess as the friend captain. So if you have like strength characters, they're going to be really good with this, as Kaido also boosts those characters. So ideally what you'd do on stage 2 is you'd be using the Cracker special, which changes all slots including block into Dex. And remember that with Kaido's captain ability, he actually changes Dex slots into Wano. So we basically just get a full board of Wano slots. And then we also have the Queen special, which removes the enemy's defense up, and it actually locks our slots for 1 turn. So we're going to have a full board of Wano slots that we can keep. And the thing with Kaido as a captain is that he does end of turn damage. So we can get around the resilience as well. So just by using the Cracker and the Queen special, should be more than enough damage to get through stage 2. And then when we have a look at the boss stage, there's a lot of different gimmicks. There is the immunity to like instant defeat specials and health cuts, normal attacks only, which is pretty typical. There is a barrier where you need to have 2 Wano slots in order to break through that barrier. It's pretty annoying. You have and then a bunch of like bad slot related stuff. So they make type slots badly matching for 5 turns. They change the top row to block, middle row to unfavorable, bottom row into bomb slots. But of course, we have a full board of Wano slots heading into stage 3, so that's not going to be an issue. There is limit special uses where you can only use 2 specials for 3 turns. But with this ability list that we can see here, Kaido does have the potential ability of limit special use resistance by 3 turns. So by himself, he removes that debuff. You can use some other characters that are also pretty good with Kaido, like the Dex Super Sugo Big Mom is also a character that has that, so that's another character you could think about using. And then there's also Intimidate, so -1 turn to any attack boost for 5 turns, and there is 10 turns of Rainbow Shield damage reduction. So it's a 65% reduction, so it's not the worst Rainbow Shield ever, but it is still something you probably want to try and get around. And if you do any slot manipulation, you get a full board of block slots, but apparently the interruption is only 1 time. But this is why I wanted to use Jesus Burgess as the friend, because his special will just set the enemy's damage reduction to 0% for 1 turn, so that's obviously really good. And he also provides 3 turns of an attack boost, which gets around the Intimidate. So with this team, you'll have Jack for color affinity, you've got Kaido for the orb boost and the increased damage taken, including a conditional boost. And then you've got Jesus Burgess for attack boost and chain boost. Vasco Shot, not really needed on the team. The only reason he is here is because he provides chain boundary. That's pretty cool, but ultimately not really required. You could replace Vasco Shot with whatever you want, but he's just nice because chain boundary is a really good buff to get to just give you a lot of additional damage against this fight. So this is just one team that you could use. Abusing Wano slots and Jesus Burgess are 2 really good characters you could try and use. Of course, if you have the new Toby Ropo legend that debuted for the Kizuna, they have inbuilt effects to remove the rainbow shield, they've got Wano slot manipulation, so this content is kind of built around Toby Robo to be used, but ultimately you don't have to use them, you can use a lot of other characters to also get around these gimmicks. So the next team we're going to have a look at is the strength variation of the 10-star Kizuna, slasher, driven, and cerebral or receiving cooldown. The team that you're looking at right here ideally would actually use Legend Carrot as the friend captain. Bit of a weird team comp, I know, but it actually does get around all the gimmicks, and it does, actually do pretty decent damage too. So with the way that this team and how it works, on stage 2, you do see that for one turn, your color affinity, you're given a 1.1 color affinity, which is kind of interesting. I think it's supposed to probably try and counter the Toby Robo legend who does color affinity. It's probably some type of way to counteract that so that you can get the attack boost instead, probably. It also gives a chain boundary. It's a 3.0 chain boundary for 3 turns, so that means if you kill stage 2 in 1 turn, that will carry over to the next stage. So having multiple turns of really good chain is really, really nice. And then also a damage threshold, but there's also intimidate. So anytime you activate a chain lock special, you're given -1 turn of it. So you can't even bring like a 3-turn chain lock into this because they're going to reduce it down by 1. However, Shank's crew does get around that with their captain ability that you can see here. It says in the right here, if the crew uses a special to set the chain multiply, extends the duration of that by 1 turn. So obviously they have 3 turns of a 3.75 chain lock. They extend it by 1 to 4 turns. The intimidate reduces it back by 1 back to 3. So that actually works really well to get around that intimidate effect. And as I said, we'd be using Carrot as the friend captain to get around the damage reduction effect. So we don't even have to bring a character to remove damage threshold. We can just use Carrot to bypass it anyway. And then we have a look at the final boss. The final boss is going to have the same kind of immunities as the other boss. However, there is an immunity, but you're allowed to apply defense down, and you're allowed to go ahead and inflict increased damage taken. So that's actually really, really neat. So what you can do here is why we have this Buggy on the crew. Buggy does have a crewmate ability to remove the remove SFX or the blindness debuff, and he does have a special to remove increased defense. However, if I remember correctly, Legend Carrot with level limit break with her special does remove enemies defense, like sets it to 0 for 1 turn. So realistically, you don't even need this particular character, but removing blindness is really nice because it's just a really annoying and pesky debuff. There's slot change, of course, unfavorable slots. There is a barrier where you have to hit 2 perfects. There's fear as well, kind of annoying. Actually, now that I think about it, the fear actually is going to nullify the effect of this guy anyway. Okay, so you can completely ignore that. I completely forgot that fear would remove that type of crewmate ability to remove SFX. So I guess you kind of just have to tank it or have a character that has fear resistance and the ability to remove blindness, which I don't think there's many of those out there. Potentially like Zoro and Sanji, for example, is a character that can remove fear as a captain. So you may want to opt to use that, potentially. Then there's also defense up, as I said. Carrot can remove it. The Buggy and Mr. 3 character also removes the defense up, so there's multiple different options. But the reason why I wanted to use Carrot is because the enemy does have nullified damage for 4 turns. And there is an interrupt. If you remove the damage nullification, the enemy inflicts 3 times increased damage taken and then does like a pain debuff on your crew. Ultimately ends up being really bad. So it's kind of annoying that they've got that nullified damage, so you kind of have to use some really weird characters in order to get around this fight to begin with. Now, with this team, we've just got a bunch of other specials. As I said, Carrot would give you the orb boost as a friend captain. We've got Smoker, just a random quick character that we can put on the team that gets cooldown, that gives us an attack boost. You got Okiku for color affinity, Kaido because he gives you the full board of slots and inflicts increased damage taken to the opponent, just giving you free damage because why not? Super, super good. So yeah, a bit of a weird team, as I said, but gets around the gimmicks. Aside from the blindness, that's the only thing this team wouldn't be able to get around. You need to find other ways in order to do that. But it does do a pretty serious amount of damage, and especially because it does get around that chain attack down that you are inflicted with stage 2 that would carry over into stage 3. And now we can have a look at the final 10-star difficulty Kizuna, which is against the Int variation. Now this team ideally is going to be using 2 6-star Gear 5 Luffys. So this isn't the hybrid where you run one evolved one and then one that is unevolved. This one ideally you actually want to run 2 unevolved ones because you actually want to abuse the revive mechanic of this character. So you see here that Strength, Dex, and Psi all receive cooldown. Remember that you do want to trigger the EX Super of Luffy, so you do need 3 of the listed characters on the crew. this team does fulfill that, and there is an empty position because with this team, we already get around everything, so the last position can be literally whatever you want. But the way that this team would work is on stage 2, we would use one of our EX supers of one of the Luffys, and then we could use a Sanji special, which would give us Chain Boundary, and then we have the support of Flampe, and that says that anytime you use a special that does some slot manipulation, then your Psy characters receive a 1.5 orb boost. And remember, we've used one of our EX supers, which means that we can basically get around the nullify damage, the tandem slot barrier, and the damage reduction that gets applied on stage 2. So we just don't have to worry about that at all. And then when you reach the boss stage, the enemy does have immunities, but you can use defense down and you can inflict increased damage taken, which is pretty nice. Now, the annoying thing about this stage is that your type slots, recovery, tandem, Wano, G, and rainbow slots all have their multipliers reduced by down to 0.5. So normally if you have, like, let's say a matching slot, for example, like a matching slot is a 2x multiplier. Basically what this does is that it sets all slots to be like non-matching all the time. That's basically what it is. However, the only slots that are unaffected by this is like a Semler slot, for example. So if you have a way to just get Semler slots, that's something that you could potentially do, which is why this free position is really nice for a lot of people. Empty slots is another way that you can abuse that. If you have a character that can give you empty slots and enhance the multiplier of those empty slots, characters like Corazon and Law, even though they're int, they won't receive cooldown on this stage. The new Blackbeard that just came out does have a way to do that as well. It's very frustrating that they've done this because it means you have to run really weird characters in order to just get around this content. Very frustrating. So aside from the slot multiplier stuff, making all of these slots count as badly matching, basically, there's also 7 turns of Rainbow Shield, which is again why the Luffy is really good, and there's increased damage taken, because what happens is when you kill this enemy, he's going to revive to 40% and do 100,000 damage to your crew. Now, because we've only used one of the EX supers of Luffy, the other Luffy hasn't used his EX super, he does have the revive mechanic still. So we can take the hit, revive, and then after that turn, we can use our secondary Luffy special. Because usually on your burst turn, you use one of your Luffys, gives you color affinity, it gives you an orb boost, so that's really dope. And then on the revive, you can use your secondary Luffy to get the color affinity and the orb boost again. So you do see that after the revive, after one turn has passed, you're inflicted with fear and special reverse, and then Luffy as a captain deals with special reverse. So it does feel like, you know, Gear 5 Luffy is really good for this. The only real issue is finding a character that could deal with the slots. So you want to get like Semler slots, you want empty slots. Those are the only two ones that actually make sense, because G slots you can't use. You can use them, it's just that your damage is going to be severely nerfed if you're not using Semler slots or empty slots. Very frustrating that they've built it that way, but it is what it is. So this team will be able to get the job done so long as you can fill this last position with a way to get Semler slots or something along those lines. So that is going to wrap it up from me. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Other than that, guys, I will see you guys within the next video.